Good
Hi, welcome
morning.
welcome to Breakfast in Biology, day 48. After today, we have 4 days left. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week. That is it. 4
Monday is
days.
Memorial Day.
Monday,
Maybe it'll
Memorial
snow.
And then you have the following week to make up any work that you still haven't done. They're giving you a whole week to do that for whatever reason. You should be done.
So get it done now so that next Friday you can sing the schools out for summer song.
Right.
I mean, seriously.
And really, I think right now, what is in the grade book, what you see in the grade book is, I think, all you will see in the grade book. So, like, if you get all the assignments done in the grade book right now, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we are giving
No promise here, but I think that's it.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. Maybe
and
one.
I think my grades are up to date. So if you have a grade in there that you have a 0 or you have an exclamation point for that you're like, why? Because I did it, then you better reach out to me. Because right now I think I've graded everything that I have to grade.
I did not put in anything for the flip grid for those people that didn't do it. So I'm doing that now so that they'll see something. But if you did the flip grid, I have that in there. And everything, to my knowledge, is up to date as well.
So that's it, guys. Let's get that stuff done. Make sure you do the flip grid. We really like to see the numbers. I think about 20 some people have done the flip grid so far. We'd love to double that, triple that, quadruple that, because we're really excited about that. And it's been so nice to hear your voices, and some of you that have showed your faces, see your faces. I was even watching Mrs. Smith students and thinking, oh, it's so nice to see that student that I never even had in class but would see in the hall. So please, let's do it. Who's here today?
I don't know. I'm sorry. My allergies are like crazy because it's raining. Darius was here first. Surprise. Jake was here. Zuli was here. Eli, Emily, Cohen, Gladys, Lexi, Radika, Maya, Alex, Alexia, Mr. Noble or Mrs. Noble, not sure who is under the there. Supreme Ginger is here.
So I got to tell you guys, before we jump into evolution, while we're waiting for a few more people to say hello, Mrs. Smith and I have been really pleased with and talked about on many occasions how much we like those of you that show up to the live stream every day and say hi in the chat and in the community. We actually feel, I mean, it's created almost like its own little kind of class or whatever. And so this is something I think that her and I will probably remember for a long time, these couple weeks with you in this chat. And we just really appreciate it. So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, we actually, look forward to this. You know, Lexi says, is the live stream not playing? I don't know. We're here.
Yeah. Hit reload your browser, Lexi, but she won't hear us.
Yes.
Reload your browser.
Yeah, that's what Eli just said too in the chat. Thank you, Eli. William's here while we're looking at this. Shay and Carissa popped in. But I mean, really, like we miss you all, and to me, at least, it makes a difference. You know, the ones that I see and the ones that I just receive papers from, like different, you know what I mean, thing. Like, I feel like we developed a different relationship, those of you that have showed up and been here. You know, we go back to school at some point eventually. Like, I can't wait to see the ones of you that I feel like we got to talk to here, you know, like, so thank you for showing up and being here and making us feel and look forward to this.
I mean, we can't wait to see everybody, but there's a special thing there for you that are showing up. We love that. So if you've been here every day and you've been lurking, please say hi in the chat. Come on. Or send us an email. Just be like, hey, I've been there every day. Let us know how you like it. Just something. Anyway.
We have a lurker. We can have a silent lurker. Lurker number 2. Lurker, you know, like thing 1, thing 2. Lurker 1, lurker 2.
Extreme lurker. Lurker extreme. So yesterday we talked about evolution. We talked about some of the evidence for evolution. Next week, we plan on a day or two of talking about evolution a little bit deeper, getting into maybe some of those mechanisms, right? So we talked about the overall mechanism, which is natural selection. So how did Darwin kind of figure out that this might work? Well, we've taken that further too. And like, so what are some of those things that isolate, that separate species, organisms, and let them speciate, let them become what we would call new species? And so we haven't talked enough about that, and we might need to define a little bit what species are, refresh your memory on that next week, and kind of get into how we can get new species, right? Still kind of microevolution, right? So yesterday we showed you some of the bigger picture stuff, the macro evolution stuff. And if you just think back to yesterday, we talked about things like physiological resistance, biogeography, these evidences that show us this, fossil evidence, homologous structures and anatomy, things that have the same structure but maybe have different purposes because they evolved, they changed over time. Analogous structures, things that developed independently of each other to do the same things, and they end up working kind of the same way. Maybe structures, but they're doing the same thing. Vestigial structures, those evolutionary leftovers, right? Embryology, we got into embryology and how cool that is. We got into some biochemistry, which you guys know really well. So if you really think about this, whole year has been a class on evolution. And so the whole principle of bio, we talked in the beginning of the year about like kind of key themes that run through the class. Biology, the study of biology is really based on this evolutionary theory, right? So we thought today we would have an easy day and just jump back to the slideshow and kind of go through some of those things, some of your slides. So we aren't going to hit them all. There's a lot of slides in here. Thank you for everybody that participated. Where do you want to start? You want to start here? Do you want to? We're going to skip around a little bit, I think. We can start with the elephants because they're one of my favorite.
Elephants.
Love elephants. And this is just talking about like how we see changes in the modern day elephants from what the elephant that we thought what the fossil record would tell us they might have looked like in the past. Shorter trunks, smaller ears, smaller tusks, things like that. But what a majestic animal. Where do you want to go, Mrs. Smith?
I don't know, but I'm looking at Annie's slide here. And we talked about this slide.
She changed the picture.
Because we were going to talk about how we were upset about the picture because it was actually the same picture, the same organism that somebody had like used tones on because it was the same exact same exact owl. And she changed it. Bravo, Annie, for like noticing that was not a good picture.
Yeah.
Now it looks perfect. So anyway, there was a picture that she had put that originally it was like, oh, it's good. It's showing the tawny owls of being gray and then changing over time and showing that change. But it was like a picture that somebody had just used like a black and white filter on. And so now it's perfect. So I don't even know if Annie's out there. I don't remember saying hello to her this morning. But kudos on that.
And yeah, and so this idea that, they were gray because it was cold, or was it because of colder before? Covering the snow, they would have blended in better as things warmed up, and there wasn't as much so that the brownish color blended into the environment better. And this slide is really good because we asked you to find organisms that have changed over time. And one thing we weren't really specific about was recent. So some of you have jumped in to the whole evolutionary history of an organism. This was good because this is something that we could have seen in our lifetime. Right? I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I don't either. It's interesting. But I don't even know who they are. They.
Small omnivorous mammal that was about the size of a raccoon that had a pig-like features and lived in Asia Millions of years ago. Okay. Well, we talked about those bones in the hips of a whale. Dolphins are a mammal too, so dolphins would be another organism that we would have thought maybe at one point through the evolutionary history was a land dweller and made that change back to the ocean. Oh, wrong way. Awesome, Elijah. So this is the invisible wazernut, and over time, it developed a longer trunk because ants got deeper in the ground.
I can't even think right now. Gladys is talking about the red pandas. So the giant panda belongs to the bear family, but the red panda is its own unique family. I'm not sure what the exact, you know what I mean? It's just showing change over time. Are you saying that they share, it says genetic adaptations. Do you mean genetic ancestry?
Probably.
So
there's a link to them, but they would have branched off, right? So they would have had a common ancestor, and then over time, these would have kind of developed in this direction, and those been differently. So this is a good one for the assignment. This is a real good one if you think about it, because we asked you to change over time, right? And we said, organisms that have changed. So we have domestic pigs that are descended from wild boars. They were domesticated from wild boars as early as 13,000 to 12,700 BC. Okay, a long time ago. The domestic pigs are bigger than wild boars. But it's easy to see the ancestry there. It's easy to see, we domesticated them. People domesticated them. The changes over time are kind of easy to see, and that's a good example of what we were thinking about, I think.
And when we'll talk about speciation too, one of the things that makes me think of that, especially since Alexia just put Pumbaa in there, and I think it has 2 A's, by the way, but that just because a species becomes a new species, and maybe we'll talk about this next week, doesn't necessarily mean that the old species disappears. It doesn't have to replace. It can branch off and they still be left with the original and the new if they fulfill a different niche.
So is a domestic boar, could a domestic boar and a wild boar breed? Are they totally different species now?
I don't know. I'm going to have to, I'd have to look into that. But it just made me think of, you know what I mean, that sometimes we have speciation. And we'll talk, that's one of the things, like, you can, and then you have genetic drift where then alleles are put back into the population. So, you love snakes. If you talk about the subspecies of rat snakes, and they use the term subspecies instead of separate species. Peppered moth, we talked about a little bit before. So I don't know if we need to talk about it too much more, having to do with industrial revolution and the fact that there's more things in the environment.
Oh my gosh, come on, computer. Okay. It's possible that early ancestors of the flamingo had a different type of beak that was more like other birds. The theory is that modification occurred over time to give them more of an opportunity to feed on various types of prey. The entire feeding process is likely the result of evolution as well. You want the monkeys?
Sure. So it says had developed more upright skeletons, which allow them to walk on 2 legs for longer than chimpanzees and many other primates. They have also been known to use basic tools such as sharp rocks and sticks. So there's a whole lot of stuff we could go into with primate evolution and things like that. And that really is like an upper level thing. But one of the things that we see with this development, with ones that walked upright more, is that most people think when they talk about upright skeletons, they're talking about, different like leg muscles and stuff like that. It actually has to do with the position of the foramen, the magnum foramen on the bottom of the skull. So like you have a hole in the bottom of your skull where your spinal cord goes up. And so if you think about where that hole is, if you shift it further and further, like into the skull, it either would make you slump forward versus move back. And so if we want to talk about a specific change, it would be the position of the magnum foramen, or the foramen magnum, trying to remember which way it goes, and where that hole is, which allowed that to be able to stand more upright, if you want to go with that.
This is interesting too. While you were talking about that, I just looked. So it's a Wikipedia article on boar pig hybrids. And they're actually in Australia a very big pest. And they actually would like to hunt them to extinction, basically. So apparently, yes, in some cases anyway, without digging too deep into this, that a domesticated pig and a wild boar can breed together and produce an offspring. And they actually have a really cool thing here. They talk about, when bred intentionally, they talk about back breeding. So so this is really, really kind of interesting in light of what we're talking about. We have selectively bred organisms to have specific traits. So we want pigs to be fatter and have more meat. Mm-hmm. So they have there's some programs where they're trying to back breed to get to what early pigs might have looked like before we started selectively breeding them. If that makes sense.
Right.
And we would have to go deeper in that, but that's pretty cool. All right, so where are we at now? Domestic sheep. This is a good one. So domestic sheep with their white coat color is a result of selective breeding, because white coats are easier to dye, but you wouldn't necessarily in the wild where you're being hunted want to have a white coat. So, because that would make you stand out and easy prey.
And again, selective breeding is what Mr. Shooter was just talking about, where like we as humans would choose those desirable traits if we wanted the white
and try and breed for those. So that's a really interesting one, because the hope with this PowerPoint was simply this, right? Like, evolution, if defined as change over time, is a fact.
And
what better way to prove that to you than by showing you a bunch of examples of organisms changing over time? Remember, you have to qualify change. Like changes don't have to be huge. It's just a change. Okay.
So this isn't the organism changing itself. This is forced hybridization, which is a little bit different. That's closer to artificial selection and starts to go into the biotech realm. And if you take biotech with me, we talk about like the different ways that things can be changed, whether it's through artificial selection, whether it's through hybridization, whether it's through actually radiation, whether it is through transgenic, whether it's through I'm getting into terms that I don't want to define right now. But there's a lot of different ways. So this is, although showing how an organism has changed, this is really like human impacted change with the hybrid mouse. And I don't know enough about this to know if this is if this is a change that is viable, or if this is a change that is not viable.
So we're about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody else did the water nut. So we're about 20 minutes. And what we would, I think, encourage you to do, unless there's another one in here that you wanted to make sure we hit, Mrs. Smith, is just to kind of have a look through and see what people put. It's interesting, to look at some of the ideas and the evolution, and this one talking about fish going from very early fish and how they've evolved from jawless fish into jawed fish. And so there's all kinds of really cool stuff in here. What?
Can you go back to Aiden's real quick, just because he talks about cephalopods? And I think that this is a great thing to mention, is that as we talk about evolution and we're talking about adaptations and change over time and all of that, please make sure you keep in mind that some people think that evolution means superiority, whether it's intelligence, whether it is, better, but really it's about survivability and about fitness. And cephalopods are not advanced. Okay. And we think about like, oh, they are so super smart. They're not advanced that way, but cephalopods are incredible. If you've ever watched the video, and you can, on like the way that their skin works and their ability to camouflage, they can't see. They're doing it. It's just amazing. Like amazing. So anyway, sorry. I love cephalopods. They're really cool. They're also freaky deaky, but they're awesome.
Right. So this idea that what makes you survive and breed. So one of the jokes that I always make is we think about success in humans as who has the biggest house, the fanciest car, the nicest clothes. But that idiot that you would see on Jerry Springer that's had 30 kids to 28 different women.
I mean, what is it? 18 kids and counting? 19, 20, 25 kids and counting? Like, I don't know how many they're up to.
Right. By evolution standards, those would be the most successful individuals because they have passed on their genetic information to more people or to more offspring than anybody else.
I mean, who's best fit? The one that's having one kid, or the one that uses a mind trick to have, you know what I mean?
Have 30, like I said, 28 kids to 30 different women. We in our society, we don't applaud that. We don't think that that person is necessarily an upstanding individual. Evolutionarily speaking, though, he won.
Right. If we're talking about birds, like
if you're a bird and you fathered 30 different, you've won. And so you've passed on your genes, and your genes must make you more survivable and things like that. So it is something to think about. And it's a great question, not one we're going to ask, but is natural selection and the laws of evolution and the way the mechanism still applying to people? It's an interesting thing to think about. So anyway, go through, check them out. Check out the different things.
Yeah.
And there's so much to this. Oh my gosh. We get excited. Okay, you have to forgive us. We're passionate people about certain things. We get excited because I see like reptiles, and I think, do you know what like one of the really awesome evolutionary moments was? If you want like an awesome, I'll leave you with this today. This is the last thing I'll say. An awesome moment in evolutionary time is when reptiles started laying eggs on land. It's an incredible moment because before reptiles laying eggs on land, you had to go to the water to breed. So the only other real animal that's out on land is like vertebrate out on land is going to be amphibians. But amphibians are still have to run back to the water to breed because they lay their eggs underwater, and they need water for sperm to get from the male to the female. Two things happen with reptiles: internal fertilization. Think about that for a second. They can get the eggs directly to the sperm, so they don't need water. So now they have organs that allow that to happen. Crazy. And the ability to lay eggs on land. These are huge moments in evolution because all of a sudden, all these new niches that were not available before open up. So now organisms, vertebrates, we'll say vertebrates, are on land, able to move away from water. And so now there's a whole bunch of new niches. And so what happens from that? So just things to think about. Yeah, mind blown. Anything else, Mrs. Smith?
Well, you were just talking about how we had studied evolution all year, which is why I shared that screen with you. One of my favorite quotes. That just like, really, we've been studying and talking about evolution all year. And so it really is that over-encompassing thing that Dostoevsky talks about. So Anyway,
So nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. Does that mean that everything is right?
no.
No. That's why a lot of this stuff is still a theory, right? And if we get new evidence, those theories will change. But yeah, that's a great quote. Great. That's awesome. That's a perfect place to say, stay safe, wash your hands. We love you. 4 more days. Get your stuff done.
And I'm going into a Zoom if anybody wants to. My students, Mr. Suter students, whoever would like to pop in. Links in Moodle. Password, Biosmith. See ya.
Yeah. For my students, go to her Zoom if you have questions. Link is in my Moodle at the top. Password's Biosmith. I have to go pick my wife up from the hospital, so I can't.
Peace out.
Everybody. Have a great day. Oh, wait. What do I hit? Boom. Oh.